You have been told to protect your child from failure. That advice is quietly destroying 1 in 3 kids' ability to function as adults, and most parents have no idea it's happening. Right now, today, the way you respond when your child struggles is either building them up or breaking something inside them that takes years to repair. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to show you what the research actually says, because the truth is the opposite of everything you've been taught. The most resilient, successful, happiest adults alive, they were the kids who failed, repeatedly, publicly, painfully. And the kids who were shielded from every setback? Studies from Stanford and Harvard show they are hitting their 20s completely unprepared, anxious, dependent, and unable to cope with ordinary life stress. So before you jump in to fix your child's next problem, you need to watch this entire video. Because what you're about to learn might be the most important thing you hear this year as a parent. To understand why we parent the way we do, you have to go back to 1990. That's the decade when the concept of self-esteem as the foundation of child development exploded into mainstream parenting culture. Psychologist Nathaniel Branden had published work suggesting high self-esteem was the key to success. Schools started handing out participation trophies. Parents started intervening in every conflict, and a generation of well-meaning moms and dads began doing something that felt completely natural, removing obstacles from their children's paths. By 1995, helicopter parenting had entered the cultural vocabulary. Books, talk shows, pediatricians. Everyone was telling you that a good parent protects, a good parent solves, a good parent makes it better. And you listened, because you love your kid. That's not a character flaw. That's love. But here's what nobody told you back then, and what the science has since proven beyond any reasonable doubt. When you take away the struggle, you take away the growth. Every single time. Here's where things get uncomfortable, and I need you to stay with me here. In 2004, researchers at Columbia University ran a now famous study on 400 students. They split them into 2 groups. One group was praised for their intelligence after a task. The other group was praised for their effort. Then both groups were given a harder task where they could fail. The kids praised for intelligence, the ones told they were smart, chose the easier path. They avoided the challenge. They were terrified of failing and looking dumb. The kids praised for effort? They ran toward the harder problem. They embraced the struggle. They actually enjoyed it. And when both groups eventually hit a task they couldn't complete, the effort kids improved by 30% on the next attempt. The intelligence kids got worse. That study, led by Dr. Carol Dweck, cracked open something enormous. It wasn't about failure itself. It was about what a child learns to believe failure means. And right now, millions of parents are accidentally teaching their kids that failure means something is permanently wrong with them. By 2010, something alarming started showing up on college campuses across the United States. Counseling centers were overwhelmed, not with students dealing with trauma or loss, with students who had never learned to deal with ordinary setbacks. A bad grade, a rejected application, a friendship falling apart. Administrators at universities like Yale and MIT started using a term you might have heard: fragile students. Kids who had been academically brilliant their entire lives but emotionally shattered by the first real obstacle they faced without a parent to fix it. And the parents? They followed them to college. A 2013 survey found that 31% of college freshmen reported their parents had contacted a professor or administrator on their behalf. Think about that. Your child is 18 years old, a legal adult, and you are still fighting their battles. Not because you're a bad parent, because you were never told that stepping back is an act of love. Letting them fall is how they learn to get back up. And if they never fall while you're there to catch them, what happens when you're not? 2018 was when everything peaked. That year, a landmark report from the American Psychological Association found that Gen Z, the first generation raised entirely under helicopter parenting norms, had the highest rates of anxiety, depression, and loneliness ever recorded for young people. Ever. Not slightly higher. Record-breaking. And simultaneously, Jean Twenga's research published in her book iGen identified something chilling. The decline in resilience wasn't random. It tracked almost perfectly with the rise in parental over-involvement. The more parents hovered, the worse the outcomes. Now here's the part that should stop you cold. This isn't just about mental health statistics. A 2019 study from Florida State University found that kids who experienced age-appropriate failures and were allowed to work through them independently showed measurably higher executive function. That's focus, problem-solving, self-regulation, by age 12. Those are the skills that determine career success, relationship quality, financial stability, everything you actually want for your child's future. You are not protecting them from pain. You are protecting them from becoming capable. Right now, in 2024, we are in a crisis that most parenting content refuses to talk about honestly, because honesty is uncomfortable. Employers are reporting that new hires in their 20s struggle to receive critical feedback without shutting down or quitting. Therapists are seeing a surge in adults in their late 20s and 30s who have never developed basic coping mechanisms. And the irony is devastating. The parents who worked the hardest, who sacrificed the most, who were the most involved, are often the ones whose children are struggling the most. This is not your fault. You did what you were told. You did it out of love. But love without limits teaches a child that they cannot survive without you. And that belief, that quiet, unspoken belief, is the most damaging thing a child can carry into adulthood. The good news? This is fixable. And it starts with one decision: choosing to trust your child's struggle more than you fear their pain. So what does the research say actually works? What does the future look like if you start making the shift today? Dr. Wendy Mogul, clinical psychologist and author, has spent 20 years studying this. Her findings are clear. Children who are allowed to experience failure in safe, age-appropriate contexts between ages 6 and 14 develop what she calls psychological immunity. They don't just survive setbacks. They expect to overcome them. They build an internal story that says, "I have been here before. I got through it. I can do it again." That story becomes the foundation of confidence. Real confidence, not the hollow kind that comes from never being challenged, but the kind that comes from knowing you can fall and stand back up. And the window for building this, it's open right now, whatever age your child is. Because the research is consistent. It is never too late to stop rescuing and start coaching. The difference between a parent who rescues and a parent who coaches is the difference between a child who needs you forever and a child who chooses you freely. Here is what this means for you practically starting this week. When your child says the homework is too hard, don't solve it. Sit with them, ask questions, let them feel the friction. When they lose the game, resist the urge to explain why it wasn't their fault. Ask them what they would do differently next time. When they have a conflict with a friend, don't call the other parent. Let your child navigate it with your guidance, not your intervention. These are not small things. These moments are the training ground for every hard conversation, every professional rejection, every relationship difficulty they will ever face as an adult. And if you want to go deeper, if you want a practical, research-backed roadmap for making this shift without guilt and without damaging your relationship with your child, I cannot recommend Jessica Lahey's book, The Gift of Failure, strongly enough. Lahey is a teacher and journalist who spent years watching gifted children fail to launch, and she wrote the definitive guide for parents who are ready to love their kids in the way that actually serves them. I'll link it below. Read the first chapter and tell me it doesn't change something in you. The curiosity loop I opened at the start of this video? Here's the close. The parents who protect their children from everything are not raising survivors. They are raising children who will spend their adult lives waiting to be rescued. You now know better. That means you can do better. If this video shifted something for you, if it made you think about one moment this week where you stepped in when you could have stepped back, share it with one parent who needs to hear it. Because the most loving thing we can do right now is tell each other the truth. Subscribe if you want more research-backed parenting content that respects your intelligence and your love for your kids. And drop a comment below. Tell me one area where you're going to let your child struggle more this week. I read every single one. Disclaimer. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing constitutes professional advice of any kind.